Hey there, Laker fans. Welcome to another episode of Lakers Detailed. I'm your host, Vinay, with my co host, Raj. Raj, the first round of the NBA draft has concluded. Not really too many surprises, a couple of surprises, but expected ones, the expected moves that we knew were coming. Cooper Flag goes number one. Dylan Harper goes number two. VJ Edgecombe goes number three, which might have been a little bit of a surprise because I think people thought Ace Bailey was going to go up there, and Ace Bailey drops to the Utah Jazz, which was probably the biggest surprise, at least early on in the draft. So, a lot of teams making interesting picks. We did get
Yeah,
a trade that we'll discuss. But before we get into that, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. This is the part of the year that I feel the least informed. I do not pretend to try to understand what's going on. I watch less than I think 5% of college basketball. If I did one of those, the inside the NBA, when they would do the who he play for type
Who?
things.
Yeah.
If you went and told me to do 12 names in the draft, I would probably get to around five or six, and then
Yeah.
you could make up names and I would believe you. So respect to everyone who does the draft. It's an incredible craft. Jonathan Gavoni, the passion that he shows is only one up by Kendrick Perkins pretending to understand what's going on right after it. Just an incredible visualization, but incredible draft. Always cool to see the crime. Not cool to see crime, but seeing the emotion and
Yes.
players getting picked. But yeah, Vinay, I respect to everyone who does this. Everyone's like, that's a steal. That's this. I honestly have no
Yes.
idea. I follow the picks that come after and the analysis after it. I trust the people who analyze this for a living. So the Lakers aren't part of this at all, but yes, congrats to everyone on the draft and their work, and hopefully it came through with the fruits of whatever labor they put into it.
Yeah. It was a very interesting draft. Like I said, some of the folks, some of the players that got picked kind of were expecting that range. There were some surprise picks really high that we'll discuss because they do sort of relate to what we were talking about in terms of what opportunities that the Lakers might have. But the I was gonna say like the most interesting part or the funny observation I had is I don't know if you watched um, Stephen A. Smith and Bob Myers. And if you
Oh
listen,
yes.
yeah, if you listen to them speak, Bob is it's actually listening to Bob is very, very interesting because he's actually talking as if he's like how he would draft evaluate somebody.
Mm.
So it was super interesting listening to him. But Stephen A. Smith was cracked out today. Like his emotion was like all over the place. And I was just like, bro, this guy did lines of something before he came to this show because I've never seen him be this animated. Like it was like way over the top. Like Phoenix drafted Kaman Malawak. Hopefully I'm not butchering his name. And he was just like, why did Phoenix trade the pick? Oh my god, I can't believe it. I was just like, bro, what is going on, dude? This is not that serious, like for you to be this upset about. And so it was just one of those things that was interesting. Speaking of the Phoenix Suns, Raj, the Phoenix Suns traded for the guy that we traded
Yes.
for, and then sent him back. He ends up getting traded. Mark Williams ends up getting traded for the 29th pick in the draft of this year and a future first. So less than what the Lakers technically offered him.
Yeah.
And he ends up as a Phoenix Sun, another team that seems to have a logjam of too many players in the same position. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I'm surprised they got that much. I mean, after all the health concerns and the conversations about his medicals for them, and I, pointed out that they got two first round picks, and I was very quickly, corrected that they are late, super late first rounders, the 29th pick, and a first rounder in 2029, where they get the worst of, I believe, three teams, some mix of those
Yeah.
teams, in that draft. But in any case, they got two first rounders to get off of a player that they traded 3 months ago. I mean, that's kind of the context that I look at it is they already traded him. He came back and they somehow still got two first round pick value. I'm sure they'd
Mm-hmm.
rather have Dalton Connect. Phoenix, I believe, traded their only first rounder to trade this summer. So I think that's part of why Stephen A. Smith went pretty bewildered in his reaction. But they get good. Like to me, Mark Williams healthy is still a very good player. Healthy is obviously
Mm-hmm.
the strong word. If healthy is a strong word. Malawak has been, I think, ranked higher than 10. I think there was a range where he could have went fifth to Utah or something like that. So, but in all in all, in the analysis, he's a top level center, one of the better ones in this draft. But no, interesting. They also have Nick Richards still employed, on the Suns, who they just traded for. They also have Nurkic, I believe, still signed for next season.
Nurkic went to Charlotte. He's in
Oh
Charlotte.
yes,
Yeah.
you're right. Yes, I totally blanked on that move. But yes, so I guess they still have a little log jam at center. Three centers, or two centers playing the same position. So we'll see. But interesting, Vinay. They got two centers while we still did not get one. So they pulled off two centers in one day while we still are sitting there with our hands tied. Tyler, are you surprised they got two first though? Just really quickly on his value that they were able to kind of get, even though they were late first, they were able to get that much draft capital for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think the two first, when you just like when it's just said out loud, two first, it's
Sure,
like, whoa,
sure.
that's a lot. But I think just like everything in basketball, like it requires like a level of context.
Low
29th
context.
pick is not too bad. It's a very
Sure.
late. I think Mark Williams was a pretty high pick, if I remember correctly. Like he was a lottery pick, maybe
I think
top
it's like
10.
12.
Yeah, he might have been close to the lottery. Definitely lottery. And so, and he was like a kind of a touted prospect. So him getting drafted that high, only going for um, a late 29th pick, and then who knows what that other first rounder ends up being. It could be late also. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's too crazy to see what he got returned for. There was a couple other trades. We're not going to discuss them right now. I mean, unless
Mm-hmm.
you want to, like the Drew Holiday trade for Anthony Simons, and then
Oof.
the Porzingis trade. Like Boston very very quickly dumping Drew. Not I don't want to say dumping, but trading away Drew and trading away Porzingis so
Yeah.
that they can do that. Boston clearly deciding, and apparently they're still holding on to Anthony Simons, and they might flip him for somebody else. But clearly, Brad Stevens has decided there are specific things financially we want to do with the salary cap, and there's specifically things that we want to do, knowing that Jason Tatum's not going to be available. So they're like going for. They're not wasting any time going for
No.
it. So. You're not. I'm not one, and I don't think you're one to compliment anything Celtics related. But I do have to
Sure.
compliment Brad Stevens. He made a decision as to what he wanted to do, and he's moving in that direction.
I'd love to know how these moves are looked at, like what prism they are seeing if Tatum doesn't, right, tear his Achilles, because I
Mm-hmm.
think obviously not, it's never a blessing when a player trades his Achilles, but I think from a front office contractual position where Boston was already, the reports were they were breaking up that team no matter
Mm-hmm.
what. Like that's just the contracts were getting out of the second apron kind of territory that they could be in. And now with Tatum out, it's you have kind of full range to blow up whatever you want. Jaylen Brown's in trade talks and no one says anything because
Mm-hmm.
it's assumed that that's fine. You can kind of kick a year down the road with Tatum out. So two just I think great moves. Porzingis out, and Anthony Simons obviously coming in for Drew Holiday. I think these are just top flight moves from a GM. The only trade I want to really get into, Vinay, is the Pelicans trading their pick this year and a 2026 first to move up and draft. I believe somebody, I don't know his first name, but his last name is
Derek Queen.
Derek Queen. I I I don't understand that. I don't understand that move at all. You just traded for Jordan Poole, who I'm not assuming, but I'm guessing he's on the team during that time.
Mm-hmm.
He's still contractually on the, he'll still be contractually, obligated to be there. What do you make of that for New Orleans?
Yeah, I think there must have been like a best player on the board, but a BPA. That's what we always say in the mock draft
Mhm.
conversations. He might have just been the best player available, and they must have liked him. They didn't think that he would drop that low or he'd be available to them, and so maybe that's why they considered trading up to get him. There could be other stuff on the horizon too, as well. If they move Zion, Derek can play both the
Mm,
4 and the 5. Eves Misi is not like an offensive threat in that capacity, so maybe they
sure.
want to try the too big look. And so that I could see the reason for them doing something like that. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, 2026, do you know what guys are available?" Blah blah. I mean, to be fair, like they didn't trade away CJ for Jordan Poole and take on extra money to not be competitive. Like the to some degree, it sounds like the Pelicans want to at least have some sort of product that competes for something on the floor, no matter what the situation is. So DeJounte Murray's not going to be back for a while. So if it's going to be like Poole, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Zion and Eves Missy. And maybe if they do move Zion, like they put Derek Queen in that spot. It is what it is. I personally, Raj, I did have Derek Queen as like right outside the top 10, like
Mm,
right at the 10 spot. I thought he was. I had him higher than Malawak, the Duke guy, just because I
mm,
value the offensive ability a little bit more. And so he was the first big off the board for me. But Malawak is fine too. So I'm not to say I'm on a high the same way the Pelicans are. It's just I don't know. Maybe that's just it's always interesting. They have a new GM too, by the way. Like they
right.
have Joe Dumars is there. So this might be one of those things where it's just like they brought in Joe Dumars to be like, yo, we don't know what to do with Zion. Like we don't know what to do with this whole situation. We just traded away Brandon Ingram. That was supposed to be the crown jewel of the Anthony Davis trade, and now he's no longer a Pelican. And so maybe Joe Dumars is about to, we say this all the time. When there's a new
Yeah.
GM that comes in, the first thing that happens is everything gets torn down or they make a splashy move. And it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see what Joe Dumars decides to do.
Yeah, I just thought it was strange to move up, but maybe again, like you said, they liked him a lot. They just traded Brandon Ingram for what, Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, right? Just kind of
Yeah.
kicked him out the door. So a lot of changes in New Orleans. But that was the only one that I thought was super strange. Again, I'm not very draft informed, so a lot of the ones where teams are moving up 2 spots, 3 spots to kind of get a specific player. But another interesting one was, I believe, Portland picking the center from China, which
Chinese Jokic, Hansen
yes,
Yang. Yes.
Hansen Yang. Yes, I find that interesting and
Yeah.
fascinating as well. Teams kind of taking shots, taking risks in that nature. Where I think he was mocked like second round, people said, or
Yeah.
something like that. Or and I think Gavoni mentioned that there were teams interested. But yeah, draft is a cool place where this is the highest potential you will have. It's just how it works. Every highlight is
It's
beautiful.
either up or down from here.
Right. There is there are no low lights on the timeline, Vinay.
Yeah.
It is all highlights right now, and that's the fun part. Hopefully the Lakers are involved in some manner tomorrow. I forgot this was a 2-day event. I was kind of
Yeah.
excited to see who the Lakers pick, but obviously it was not the case. Luka will not be calling anybody and saying welcome to the Lakers today because
Raj,
there's no chance for it.
we're getting derailed because you're supposed to talk about Lakers opportunities because we didn't do our normal Sunday night stream because the draft was this week.
Yes.
And I was out of town on the weekend. Did we talk about the Kevin Durant trade?
Not yet. No, we have not.
What do you think about? So I had guessed. Long story short, I had heard from some birds here and there that Houston was definitely a team that was interested in him. Miami was definitely a team that was interested in him, but they kind of just they had their chance like at the trade deadline and they just didn't pursue it, and then they weren't being serious. Um, I think I was openly saying that the Spurs rumor of him going to the Spurs is just a bunch of BS. Like they're just
Yeah.
being used to push the offer. So I only had two teams, really. Three, maybe, if you count Dallas as a dark horse. Two teams, Houston and Minnesota, in the back of my mind. And I thought Minnesota would win that because they'd put Gobert in the deal. And I think the reports that come out, they said they did put Gobert in the deal. But as always, Kevin Durant finds
No
ways
cold weather,
to,
baby.
yeah.
Stay away.
He pulled the Jimmy Butler and said, "No, I'm not interested in signing with the Memphis Grizzlies," and nuked that entire situation. And so Kevin Durant ends up with the Rockets for Jalen Green,
Yep.
Dylan Brooks, a
Mhm.
first round pick, which now turns into Malawak, and I forget whatever else that they got for it. That's a really good trade for the Houston Rockets, if you ask me.
Yeah.
What do you think about not the return, but like just they
Yeah.
kept everybody, dude. They kept Amen, they kept Shengun. I remember I was talking a friend of the show, Eddie of No
Mhm.
Narratives podcast. I was just like, bro, if Phoenix doesn't get Shengun back, that's not good for Phoenix because Phoenix needs a big, even if he's not a great defender. You still need a big, and like they got the one guy they didn't need in Jalen
Yeah.
Green, and I was like, you already have two shooting guards. Talk to me about what you think about
They,
that trade.
yeah, they were never getting. I mean, they were never getting Shingun. They didn't have the leverage to
Yeah.
ask for that at all. They couldn't even get Tari Eason in the deal, right? Really
No.
got no. I
No
mean,
Jabari
Jalen
Smith.
Green.
Yeah.
Jalen Green's he's one of those players that has a stand base as well. Somehow, there's some of these interesting ones that have them where you're like, not really. I don't really see what you see, but no, it's interesting. Like Phoenix was kind of put into the corner. I think every team should have shout out Gambo, who's the Phoenix Suns somehow super insider, but also does radio. So it's just
Yeah,
it's the most fascinating conversation because you have Miami Heat fans arguing with him, like, no, our trade package is better. He's like, dude, I've seen your packages. Like, they're like, I get firsthand view of what you guys are actually putting on the table, and it's
yeah.
trash. And he's doing a full circle victory lap on it. I just find that so fascinating. But yeah, Miami, I guess reportedly would not put Jovic, Jaime Jaquez, or Ware on the table, which means you don't get Kevin Durant.
Yep.
Obviously, Minnesota, I think, was the only other suitor, and Katie did not want to play in that cold weather. I'm assuming it was the weather. I mean, I doubt he turned that down because he didn't want to play with Anthony Edwards or
I think he also relationships matter. Relationships is always a big
sure
part of basketball. I think he has a great relationship
with
he has a
Ime.
good relationship with Anthony Edwards, obviously from Team USA,
Mhm.
but he also has a great relationship, I think, with Ime Udoka.
Yeah.
I remember back when he was on Brooklyn and Steve Nash got fired, there was this thing going around where people are saying, not people, but there was this thing going around where they were pushing for Brooklyn to hire Ime, but obviously the optics behind Ime's departure was a little rough, so they didn't end up doing. So I'm not really surprised they ended up with Houston. I do think, Raj, it is kind of interesting that Ime Udoka got an extension right before that trade happened, like a day or two before that
Mm.
trade happened. So it was interesting to see,
Yeah.
how
Well, I
that
mean,
relationship played out.
right before Woj retired, I think his last bit of intel that he dropped on the world was the Houston Rockets want to steal Kevin Durant. I think
Yeah,
he added Devin Booker in there as well, if
yeah,
I remember the tweet correctly. But in any case, he mentioned that they wanted to steal Kevin Durant. So this feels like it was in the works. I'm not saying there was any collusion or
yep.
anything like that, but me and Vinay watched the Suns a lot last year, and let's just say it was not difficult to see the end. Of what the final result would be of that season.
Yeah,
But yeah, so Kevin Durant, Houston Rocket, 2.5. I think it said 4 teams in 3 years
yeah,
or something crazy like that.
yeah.
I think so. That's one of
It,
my just concerns. I do not want to see Kevin Durant in that many jerseys. I think he's too special
yeah.
of a player to be doing that because me and Vinay, when we're old, we're gonna have to explain to people how freaking insane Kevin Durant was. Like, well, he was traded for Jalen Green in number 10. It's like, no, you have no idea. This is one of
Yeah,
the
I feel like everything after in the 2020s, like for these, because they're also playing for so long. Like he's gonna play like
yeah.
his 18th season or something like that. So it's just like when you play this long, it's just crazy to see what happens. He's completed the Shaq rainbow of different jerseys. He's already done that. I think
Oh yeah.
Russ has done that. Chris Paul has done that. James Harden's probably going to do that too. Like it's just one of those things. You either go out on the mountaintop,
That's
like
true.
or on a couple of teams at the very most, or you complete the rainbow if you're good enough and talented enough to do that. So it's always fascinating to see. I think those are all the major trades that happened, Raj. The Katie trade, Chris Sapp's trade, Drew trade. I don't think anything else has happened that's too serious that I can think of. Right?
I don't think so either. I think we've already discussed the Bane trade in
Yes.
a
Oh,
previous
yes. The
pod.
Bane trade we
I'm
did
pretty
discuss.
we
Yeah.
discussed. So yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
I saw a tweet, and this can't be real. I think it was by, I hope I don't butcher the ad. It was by Revive Mark or something like that. They said we haven't made a trade in the summer, Vinay, for 3 straight years.
Yeah.
Is that accurate? You
I
think?
don't. I'd have to look it up. I'm not sure.
I'm trying
I
to think
can't. I'm
back.
trying to think of off season. When was the Dennis Schroeder trade? Was it that 2021? Right after
Yeah,
off the championship?
but that was 3 summer. That was
Oh yeah, that would be
three
right
summers
outside the
ago.
window. Yeah.
They said the last trade we made was the THT for Pat Bev trade. It was the last in summer trade, like in the summer trade that
Yeah,
we made
that's not
off
really
season.
like a major trade
Doesn't
of
even
anything.
count, but
Yeah.
yes. But
Pat
even
Bev.
then,
Yeah, Bubby's saying in the YouTube comments. Shout out to all the folks in the YouTube comments and on
yes.
Twitter. We see all of your comments. We star them. If there's any questions that you guys have, you guys can always throw some up here. We'll bring them up. If it's not in the middle of the conversation, we'll definitely bring it towards the end when we start hitting up all the
Yeah,
questions.
August 20. That's insane. That
Long
our
time.
last off-season trade was 3 summers ago.
And
That is
you know what
nuts.
the funny part is? This is like like how
Shout
Um,
out George for the answer, by the way.
yeah, transaction starved, like Lakers fans always are every season. So
Right.
it's just like 3 years is like 3 months is an eternity. So 3 years, can you imagine? It's like, dude, what?
Especially with the amount of names every summer we get linked to for
Yeah,
0 trades to happen in 3
yeah.
summers. That is nuts.
Okay, so speaking of trades,
Yes.
Raj, we do have a couple of trades. People are everybody, Windhorse, Shams, everybody has been saying that this is gonna be a crazy offseason. There's gonna be a lot of movement, and it's already started.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
it's very interesting to see. But the Lakers have been linked to a couple of folks too as well. And before we get into the draft opportunities, I wanted to discuss the hot one, the current topic that everybody's been discussing, which is I would like to say an idea that we maybe originated, maybe. I don't remember anybody else speaking about it before us. I know we discussed it on Coach's Den with those guys, friends of the show, Coach Rome and all the other guys there. But um, Rui Hachimura going to Miami. I won't talk about like the specific picks and all that sort of stuff, but Rui Hachimura going to Miami for a guy like Andrew Wiggins. I just want to talk about those two players specifically because I want to. There's a debate happening on the timeline, and as always, Lakers Twitter is very fractured in their opinions about the talent ability of those two guys. So I'm a proponent that the Lakers should trade Rui Hachimura for Andrew Wiggins,
Mm,
especially if LeBron is going to be playing for longer than one season. Meaning, if next season is not his last season as a Laker, or and like if he's retiring or something, and he says I'm doing a 1+1, then I think you do have to move Rui and go for a guy like Andrew Wiggins. Now, there's a debate, Raj, about whether Andrew Wiggins is actually better than Rui Hachimura on a talent, like just a 1-to-1 comparison.
mhm.
And so I'm going to hand this off to you. But one thing I just want to say is we aren't comparing those two guys in regards to that. We're not
No,
comparing their raw ability to each other. What we're basically saying, at least what I'm saying, is that you know who your 2, 3 offensive stars are going to be. Okay. I'm putting stars in quotes because Austin Reeves is in this conversation. That's a whole different debate in itself. So I don't want to
sure.
argue about that. But you know where your offensive production is coming from for 75% of your offense, I would say, between LeBron, Austin, and Luca. So now instead of thinking about offensive production, we're looking at fit. Who fits around the
Yeah,
guys that are going to be your offensive producers? And that's the general logic without getting into deep parts of why I would want us to go after a guy like Andrew Wiggins and for Rui Hachimura. What are your thoughts about like what you've seen on the timeline between
yeah.
about those two guys?
I just want to make it clear too, Vinay. Andrew Wiggins is not a perfect player. He has
Absolutely.
his faults as well. There's a reason. I'm not saying the Warriors were quick to get rid of them because obviously, if you can get Jimmy Butler, that's a pretty clear upgrade. You don't have to be a super basketball analyst to understand that Jimmy Butler's better than Andrew Wiggins. But there is some concerns. There are some motor concerns. There are just stuff that Andrew Wiggins is not a perfect player, but the Lakers really aren't in position to be grabbing perfect players either. It's just not how this works. You can try to do that, and you will be very much sitting with your hands on the lap a lot of times because there just aren't perfect trades. There aren't perfect transactions. There are risks that are going to need to be involved. But saying all that, Rhea Hachimura is good. And I think both me and Vinay have pretty much tried to spell some of the blame that Rui gets in every single loss, kind of, depicting his role on the team, the position he plays. I think Wiggins plays the position that the Lakers want Rui to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Rui is, we've talked about this a bunch on here, but Rui's a 4, like,
Yeah.
pretty much masquerading as having to be a 3. Andrew Wiggins is a 3-2.
Yeah.
And Luca is a 4 defensively, right? So you can see where the kind of positional
Mm-hmm.
blockage is being created. And that's where I think Wiggins fits. At least the highest ceiling version of Wiggins. There's a version as well, Wiggins, that we've seen a lot in Minnesota. There's a but I think he's kind of shown on an adult team with the Warriors. There's enough of a sample there
Mhm.
to where on a good organization that has some, has a winning habits. I trust that a lot more. He's an amazing cutter, and just like if you canvas the league, Vinay, athletic wings that are 2-way aren't really available. If you
Mhm.
go around the league, Wiggins is a little bit. I think he's at what 27,
Mhm.
28 million. You look around the league for like 2-way wings. It's a tough place to find, and that's where I think Wiggins just becomes a lot more valuable, maybe to the Lakers than a team like Miami.
Mhm.
But that's where I'm at with it. I think Wiggins is better than Rui Hachimura, just full stop. That's not the conversation we're having, but I
Mhm.
just think he's a better player. I think he's a little bit more consistent. I love that he has a floater game, one of the best floater games in the league as well. Very much a threat, not just from outside, but can cut and can has all types of twisty finishes. And Rui just is not. He's not a. The way I look at them is the fluidity of both of them, how they play. Rui
Mhm.
is very rigid. Still can be effective as a cutter, but I love the way that Wiggins can kind of slide and sneak and snake into the paint and stuff like that. So I'd rather have Wiggins, but I understand people kind of apprehensive to go grab a player that was just taken off another team and they've kicked off after he was taken off the team. But
Yeah.
yeah, where are you at with I guess the Rui Wiggins conversation?
Yeah, no, it's pretty much exactly the same way that you described him. I just look at Wiggins as a better fit for what the Lakers are trying to get out of the other two positions in that starting group, and I think Rui has done a really admirable job trying to fill that role. But I think his technical ability defensively makes it difficult for him to do that. We can't put him on perimeter guys. You can't put him on guys to chase around screens. You can't put him on guys to pressure the ball, even from half court. We can't put him in that position. He's not fast enough laterally and all that sort of stuff to do those sort of things. I think Wiggins is a really great finisher off of late closeouts or open cutting lanes, that sort of thing. And I think his life would be really easy playing next to a guy like Luka. He's not playing in the Warriors cutting, like the constant motion and screening offense. So his reads are way easier and he's an explosive player. So if he gets a straight line drive to the rim, he's probably going to put a few guys on posters. And so I think it'd be a great opportunity for him. So I think you and I, Raj, and for the folks that are listening, people have done a lot of debates about the quality of the player and that sort of thing. And I totally understand if people are trying to do one-to-one comparisons to them. But as it relates to the fit to what we need with next to our three guys that we have on our roster, Wiggins just makes more sense. And not only does he make more sense for that lineup, he allows Braun and Luka to slot a little bit more into the natural defensive positions that they need to be in. Because, look, people keep saying it. We've talked about this before. Luka is not a backcourt player. Offensively, he is, but
Mm-hmm.
defensively, he isn't. He shouldn't be on the perimeter if you can avoid it. Obviously, they're going to have to be to some degree in today's modern offenses, but he's not a backcourt guy. He's not the guy that checks the other ball
Mm-hmm.
handler next to Austin Reeves, and so he needs to be slotted down to defend guys that are. He needs to be defending the Jaden McDaniels, the Julius Randles, those type of guys. He's not supposed to be defending the Mike Conleys or the Anthony Edwards. That's just
Yeah.
not that's not in his bag.
So just extending this conversation, do you have a walk away point in this trade? I guess if is there a obviously I think the core of it is Rui for Wiggins with filler contracts
Yes,
here and there. But is there a walk away point in terms of the number 20 pick is probably no longer
yeah, it's
involved
gone
in
now.
here
Yeah.
because Miami just selected I think they selected an overseas player if I have that
They
correct.
took they took the kid from Illinois, Jakushonis,
Oh, okay.
Kasparas Jakushonis. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it
He's a
was
point guard from Illinois. Yeah.
yes, Gavoni liked him a lot. I trust Gavoni on that, but I don't think the Lakers are
He
gonna
dropped a
go
lot.
in.
He was supposed to be a top 10 guy and he's dropped all the way to 20. So I'm a little
Oh,
shocked.
really? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
he was
Yeah.
mocked pretty high, I think.
Yeah, Miami gets pretty. I mean, Miami's pretty good in the draft as well. They seem to get a pretty productive player
Mhm.
every time. But I would assume the 20th pick is now off of the table
Mhm.
in terms of trading, swapping picks. Is there a walkaway point for you in a Wiggins deal? Is a first rounder a non-starter for you if that has to get the deal done?
So my thing is the way I presented this idea was if you don't want the guy, which we know you don't want because you try to trade him. I know that you try to trade him in Phoenix. Again, some birdies that I talked to mentioned that he was floated to Phoenix. and Phoenix was like, no, we're not interested in him. We already know that he was traded away from the Warriors for the Jimmy Butler deal. And so if you guys don't want him, and because you guys want to stay out of luxury tax, clear your cap space, that sort of thing, I think Rui's a productive player who's on a great contract for his productivity, and we can attach a helpful player. It might be Gabe Vincent. If you decide that you need a backup guy again, and so we can give you the cap relief and send you productive players. So we don't have to. It's not one of those things where I don't think this is one of those trades where it has to be like, wow, this guy is so incredibly good. You have to give us a bunch of picks. That's the way I look at Andrew Wiggins' situation. I think he's a great player. He's a productive player, but clearly not a 1, not a 2, maybe a 3, third option, but really just a guy who's a journeyman making his way on his abilities throughout the league. So if the core of the deal is Rui and expiring for Andrew Wiggins, I'm all for it. I think that's a win-win for both sides for probably what they're trying to accomplish. If they turn around and say, hey, we need Dalton Connect, then I need something in return. I can't give you Dalton Connect for Wiggins. Originally, my idea was, I think the one I posted online was, if you want Dalton, you can have Dalton, but you got to give me back that 20th pick because we got to get something back for it. But now if they're like, hey, we need Dalton or a first, then you've got to send me one back. Like we can do a swap. Maybe we just do a swap instead. So instead of doing a first or giving you Dalton, I'll do Rui, the expiring and the swap or something like that for Wiggins. And I think maybe that works out a little bit better, but I have to get something back. Like it can't be something like that. So that's probably my walk away point now at that point. And this is just me playing it this way. Like I have to be as stringent as possible and then see where I can meet you in between. So that's the way I kind of think of it.
Yeah, I guess the way I look at it is I think the Lakers have 2 holes they need to fill, and they need the center and the wing. I'd like to fill the center one first before I go and trade the first rounder for Wiggins. That's why I thought having this center situation kind of mapped out before free agency begins, Vinay, I think is extremely important. We still have some time. I think free agency is when 7 or 8 days or whenever it is.
It is, well, the last day for player options is the 29th, and I think free agency starts like right after that. It might not be the 30th. It might be like the 1st, July 1st is
okay.
They give like a day or something like that.
So like midnight of July 1st. So I guess 5 days from now. So hopefully the center position is figured out by then, and then you can kind of go into Miami conversations a little bit differently. But I'm with you. I don't think the Lakers are gonna splurge on Andrew Wiggins. Doesn't really match what their moves have been in the past. But man, I don't know. Looking at what I know, you went to the context of what Mark Williams was moved for, but in any case, 2 firsts is 2 firsts. That's what was given for him. I'm interested to see what the center market looks like going forward. None of the actual big names were moved, right? I don't believe in the center during the center market. Kessler wasn't moved. Claxton wasn't moved.
Yep. Correct.
So all the kind of big name ones weren't moved. Mark Williams was obviously the only center I think that changed teams. So we'll see. But yeah, Wiggins was interesting. I think that name makes the most sense. I think after Wiggins, it becomes tough. You get into names that are very more one way. Like I think Tybal is a name that's mentioned. He just opted into his kind of these more one way, very specific type players. And Wiggins, I think, just fits perfectly. And 28 million to me is not a crazy contract for what's going forward. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean we're going to discuss him because we're going to discuss his team, but that's really the main point of conversation. Obviously, this week the conversation's been about Andrew Wiggins, and I think friend of the show Anthony Irwin and a few, I think Barry Jackson of the Miami side, they've done a few not podcasts, but they've like co-written some information about reported on just the potential trade. I think Anthony's kind of sort of made it very clear that it's something that is imminent. It might just be conversations in itself, which is fine. And so I just, obviously to put that caveat, because I don't want people to get upset at him about that. But I think that's where that noise is coming from. That's why a lot of Laker fans are discussing it. But we still have the center issue, Raj. And the draft has made this a little bit more interesting. One of the things that I remember we talked about, and I remember tweeting out, is if you're a Laker fan and if you're a GM, you're looking at teams that might have positional logjams after the draft because they draft somebody that they like while already having a guy in a position in that situation. And so after the draft today, at least the first round, we have a couple of teams in that situation. One of the teams that was mentioned a couple of times because of the KD trade and whatnot, the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns, they trade for Mark Williams. Like you mentioned, they already had Nick Richards on the team. And then they also drafted Maluak. So they've actually gone out and they've added like they have three centers. Now, Nick Richards, I think, has an unguaranteed contract, or it might be like a team option or something like that for what he has. So I don't know what's going to happen with them. They might have another center on the roster. I'm not sure, but it might be a free agent. But they've got three centers, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure they're going to be trying to play two of them at least, because it wouldn't make sense to keep three on the roster like that. That's one team that has too many players in that position. Another team that now has too many players in that position is a team that you mentioned earlier, the Portland Trailblazers. They now have DeAndre Ayton, Hanson Yang, Donovan
Yep.
Clingan, the guy that they drafted last year, 2 years ago,
Hmm.
and they still have Rob Williams on the roster too as well. So now they're stocking four centers. Again, not all those guys are playing. Granted, Rob Williams has been injured, so maybe he's not playing that much in general. But you still have three centers that got to play, and all those guys are young guys. And then we have one more team that has too many centers, which is the Brooklyn Nets. They have Nick Claxton, they have
Hmm.
Daron Sharp, who's going to be a restricted free agent, and then they also drafted Danny Wolf in
Mm.
late in the first round. Danny Wolf, Raj, if you weren't watching it, his brother was very emotional after he
Okay.
got drafted, and he's getting memed to oblivion already by NBA Twitter. So I'm sure that's
Okay.
going to make rounds for you. You'll see that. But Phoenix and Portland are two interesting teams
Yeah.
because they have too many guys. And as D Smith mentions in the chat, Portland also has that one center that shoots threes, Duop Reith.
Yes.
So
Yes.
they've got five technically.
He heard
There are
us,
two
I
teams.
believe.
Oh yeah, and George
Yes.
also mentioned Oso Iguodaro. He is a guy
Oh
that
yes.
he might be a 4-5, but he's a guy that Phoenix also played at the 4-5 last season too
Hmm.
as well before the Nurkic trade. A lot of guys on those teams that don't have enough
Yeah.
minutes to go for. Of the names that I mentioned, obviously
Yeah.
Mark Williams is not available. Malawak is not going to be available. I don't think this Hanson Yang kid or Klingon are going to be available. So we get kind of whittled down to like DeAndre
Yeah.
Ayton, Rob Williams, Nick Richards. Do any of
Yeah.
those names? Nick Claxton is now could potentially be available. Any of those
Yeah.
names? Wait,
Yeah.
how do you feel about that idea of those names as a trade?
Yeah, Claxton obviously would be, I don't feel like those centers really change Claxton's value. He's probably the best of this group.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Richards, I mean, doesn't excite me as much. Maybe as a backup center, I'd like it.
Mm-hmm.
But I just can't see Nick Richards as a kind of tradable option. That leaves DeAndre Ayton, which is interesting. I think you were selling me on Ayton a few pods ago.
Oh, I wasn't selling you, Raj. Vinay doesn't have sources, but Vinay has birdies, and a few birdies said a few things to
Yes.
me, and I
Well,
was
I
like,
mean,
let me
selling
ask
what
Raj
other
what he thinks
yeah,
about him.
selling me what other salesmen have come to you with is, I guess, the better framing with it. And so I went and watched his film, and that is a very tantalizing player
Mm-hmm.
when he's right. And so contract year, to be a cynical person, is a person going into his final year, probably wants to earn one more contract. I don't believe he's 30 yet. I believe he's like
He's still
27,
pretty young.
20. Yeah,
Yeah.
still pretty young. Not the best. Again, he's not Wiggins, but I think he's very much in the like Minnesota Wiggins, trying to get out of that field, right? Kind of
Mm-hmm.
can you identify talent and believe that your culture is good enough to shift him into the player that he should be, right? The Warriors identified this with Wiggins for whenever many years ago, and if they pull off this Ayton deal, that's what this needs to be. But he's the most exciting one out of it. I think he's the most probably risk reward. I don't think you can get Ayton and Wiggins with the contracts they make.
Probably
Uh,
not. I don't think that's enough salary. We have what,
yeah,
54 million of tradable salary, and they
yeah,
combined for like 64 or something, or 61.
r-
So probably
r-
not.
right. But I would argue the center position is much more important.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love Wiggins, but Ayton would be a hell of a swing towards the fence. And so that's the only one that excites me within that kind of big positional battle that has been created by teams. And look, they can easily Portland can easily go and be like, we're just gonna keep these
Yeah.
bigs and we like our team. We just traded for Drew Holiday. We're not giving away talent. We're trying to win, what we can next season. Brooklyn can say the same thing. The Suns really have nothing to lose. I mean, just
Yeah.
traded Kevin Durant, so they are in no rush to just uh, pick off their centers to the Lakers. But Aiden's the only one to me that opens up a little bit of interesting. Do they want to pay this guy $28 million when they just drafted and they have another center kind of within the wings?
Yeah.
How about you? Any of the names excite you in that way?
Yeah, so I'm with you. I think Aiton is probably the most interesting one. I have to share this with everybody because this I thought this was really funny. Folks, when I asked Raj that question about Rob Williams versus DeAndre Ayton, and he didn't know that question was coming. I told this to the detailers in the Discord. Shout out to all the detailers who are part of the Detailers Club. Um, I didn't tell Raj that I was going to ask him about comparing those two guys together. And I knew if I asked Raj the question, it would something would spring in his mind. And I kid you not, the following couple of days, Raj was sharing clips and asking the question. He was like asking around, like, "Hey, what do you guys think about Aiden? Do you guys think Aiden's a guy that he started sharing clips?" And then it's so
Yeah,
I let Raj do his thing, his scout thing with it. But I'm with you. I think Aiden is very, very interesting because he is a guy who has, I want to say, he has a bad rep in terms of like just kind of what people think about him. Um, but I don't think that stuff is. I think the bad rep comes from personality. It doesn't come from ability.
sure,
And so one of the things I think you and I have said is the one thing that's very clear with Aiton is he's a moody dude. Like he is like many big men. Shaq was notorious for this. If you don't give him the
sure,
ball, he's going to check out. And that's why they were at their best when like Chris Paul was there because he would be spamming pick and roll with Aiton all the time, always keeping him engaged. I think in terms of having a guy who can help you in the regular season, but also a guy that can't really get played off the floor in the
sure,
postseason, I think DeAndre Ayton is probably the guy that does well. My concern here is I think a guy like Nick Claxton is good too in terms of ability, but he's a little raw offensively, and I think he could maybe get played off the floor if teams like just kind of really ignore him and all he can do
sure.
is finish lobs. Then you start getting down like the list gets really there's a big gap down, right? Like Nick Richards, not a guy we don't even know what he looks like in the playoffs because we haven't seen him in that situation. Um, and Rob Williams injury prone. We don't. Oh, he's been good in the playoffs, but again, another guy can't shoot. Might get played off even if healthy, off the floor to some degree. Um, and so I'm interested in this Aiton idea, but I do agree with you. It requires that you got to choose. If Wiggins is a real opportunity, and if Aiton is a real opportunity, you're gonna have to pick one or the other. You won't be able to get both.
Yeah, yeah. I think the word soft comes up a lot for Aiden, right? And I think bigs who are more offensively lenient kind of get put in that box, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not comparing him to this player, but Powell was put in that where,
Yeah,
this finesse
very
type of
true.
big. Aiden loves the mid range jump shot. But to your point versus Nick Claxton, like Nick Claxton's like a 50% free throw shooter, I think, right? Aiden's like a 75%
Yeah,
career free throw shooter. He is a career double guy. Like that's nothing to scoff at either. And it's funny you talked about he's a very moody guy. I don't like if you people have the time, go watch his games versus Phoenix last year.
yeah,
Like you can watch the other ones, but go watch him play Phoenix as an extra little edge. There's an extra motivation,
yeah,
right? He's rebounding, he's blocking shots, he's having these crazy games. He's yelling out and screaming when they get rebounds. Portland's already far removed from the playoffs at this
yeah, yeah.
time, but he's just excited to beat his former team. And so I think that guy and the part of it you talked about, it's not ability. We saw it. I mean, Aiton against us in the 2021 playoffs was incredible. Obviously, that series changed because of Anthony Davis's injuries, but even before the injuries, Aiton was awesome. He was a
Mhm.
bully ball guy. You could not switch against him. He
Yeah, you
punished
couldn't.
our switches.
Hmm.
And the Lakers were a great defense that season, even without AD, but obviously AD was back for the first few games. But Caruso, KCP, all those guys on switches were food. I mean, Aiden would just catch it down low and have hook
Yeah,
shot after hook shot. Very much a matchup nightmare in that series. So it's in there somewhere. The concern is how far, like in there is it? He's been on a I mean, Portland played better in the second half of the season. And I
yeah,
think the first year with Ayton was a little bit troublesome. There were some stories where he was stuck in the snow, couldn't get to the game, or it's just some weird stuff that was going on. But
Yeah.
I think the second season it was a little bit more professional. They were a better team, so that fits in that. But yeah, Lakers are in a place, Vinay, where you kind of have to throw some risk reward talent,
Yeah.
stuff. And Wiggins at Ayton is kind of the perfect representation of that because you can easily go get, obviously Capella is the name that's linked to the Lakers, but there's other, very low cost, low reward centers. But if you want to go for it, I don't know. Aiton's probably your best option. He probably wouldn't cost as much either. Probably
Hmm.
cost less than Nick Claxton, I would assume, because he's on a expiring deal.
Hmm.
But Aiton's the only one that excites me. Like you asked me, I think a few pods ago, Aiton or Robert Williams, and I think I picked
Yeah.
Williams at the time, and I think I've changed my mind on
That's
that.
exactly
Uh,
that's why because I took the other position and I was just like,
yeah,
I'm gonna ask this to Raj and I'm gonna take the other position, but I know he's gonna look this up and then he's gonna tell me later that he's gonna change his mind. But
yeah,
you came to the same conclusion that I did, which is I think they're both talented players, especially if Rob is healthy. But I've also seen Aiton be helpful in a deep run on
yeah.
both ends of the floor. And I agree with you. Like he's a guy who understands how to seal players. He can finish in the paint. He's a really good finisher. I feel like even if it's not just a lob. And this is one of those things where it's just like, so I wanted to bring up this idea. I don't think so. We've talked about the value of player IQs, but I also think like as a basketball person, right? Whether you play basketball at any level, if you run a pick and roll, it's quite literally a dance that you're
Mm,
doing with you and the guy that's screening for your teammate that's screening for you. Like real pick and roll basketball, not just screen for me so I can get an open mid range shot. I'm talking about like real stuff. And I think you have to really do this great dance. And if you have a great dance partner, um, you can be amazing. Your offense can be amazing. And I think Luca is an incredible dancer, the ball handler when it comes to pick and roll, and everybody knows that. But we don't. We so if we have to find him something, we have to find him a really great dance partner in that pick and roll, and that player has to be able to not only screen really well for him at different angles, that repeatedly have the motor to go screen and not be willing to sacrifice his body, but you also have to be able to dance in the sense that like sometimes he's not going to throw you a lob. Sometimes
mm.
he's gonna bounce past it to you. You're gonna have to take a hook shot over another 7 footer, or you're gonna have to do other kinds of different stuff. I think Aiton skill wise turns into the best dance partner for Luca. And that's why I'm kind of in that realm where it's just like if we're gonna eventually look, the Lakers have not been a pick and roll heavy offense, but Luca is a pick and roll heavy player. Like that's the way he likes to play basketball. He likes to call for the screen early and then do what he does. You got to get a guy who's willing to do it with him and can dance with him, and when he decides to do something differently outside of a lob. And so I'm curious. I wonder if the Lakers would pursue that.
Yeah, shout out, Dark Galaxy is mentioning same agent as Luca. There's been some reports that they might be, closer than people realize. I mean, usually
Mm,
that's how it works.
that is how it works.
Players of the same agency are a lot tighter than people would, imagine. It's not just with Klutz, that's a league wide thing. But
Hmm.
I'm with he's clearly, just if you take out all the outside stuff, he's clearly the most talented big man on the market. He's the most talented offensive big by a very wide margin, just from a pure skill standpoint. Has a mid-range jumper, has a hook shot from either hand. He's he can post up. You can throw him the ball and run offense through him at times as well if you'd like. Can really be kind of a release valve in that manner to help Luca and whoever's screening with him. But yeah, I mean it's a risk for sure. No, it's still only a 1 year risk, which is part of the
Yeah,
attraction as well for me and
I, I
you.
I would say I don't think the Lakers would trade for Ayton unless they knew that they were going to like keep him on an extension because that's too much of a risk to take to
Mm,
just go for a guy without a promise of an extension. But I think they would probably make sure that they could get an extension on the
yeah,
books.
yeah. Unless you have the expirings only going out, like I could maybe see
Yeah.
that, but I mean, I guess why would Portland do that? Why would they get expirings for another expiring? Doesn't really make a lot of sense either. But
Yeah, you'd have to incentivize them with something else
mhm.
altogether. You could get to. I'm actually looking up Aiton's salary right now because I needed to know what if we could even have anybody left over for us to possibly maneuver around with. Where is Portland? There's Portland. Okay. Um, if you had to choose, so Ayton makes 35, so that's like Rui plus Gabe.
Gabe.
That's about what, 29. Shake gets you to like 32, and then maybe what if they ask for Dalton? Maybe they ask for Dalton. I mean, so you could
That's a lot.
still
Yeah.
technically have like Maxi, but you wouldn't have enough to go after
A center. Yeah.
Wiggins
Or Wiggins.
or
Yeah.
Wiggins. Yeah. So if you had to choose, let's say DeAndre Ayton and Andrew Wiggins both are available. Both
Oof.
don't require picks. Both teams are saying, well, we just want expiring salaries, and we need to get because we need. Portland says they need to do it because they need to create minutes for their young centers. Miami does it because they want to get out of
Yeah.
their sides. They don't want any picks. You're helping them out with their positional logjams and their money issues. If you had to pick one or the other, which one would you pick?
Oof. Yeah. I think, man, that's tough. I'd have to know who the center is. I would have to go after Wiggins. And so I'd probably lean Wiggins, and then hopefully they have an understanding of what other centers out there. Hamas makes a good point, going after Rob Williams instead, I guess, in that point where you go and get Wiggins and then you take the chance on Robert Williams, who I don't know what his contract. I know it's a lot less than Aiton's. I think he's at like 12 or 13 million dollars. You could probably get him
I
with
just think the only pushback on Rob Williams, from what I've been hearing from said birdies, is that his injury risk is just really, really high, and so
It
that's why
is
he's a little worried about going after him.
100%. That's why he's on the contract that he is. And that's why he would be got for cheap. But man, that is tough. I probably go back and forth every day on that. I just lean slightly Wiggins now. I think you could probably get a little bit more of a talented center than you can go find an athletic wing. So I would lean Wiggins and hope you have enough to go get a center in that capacity. Where are you at with those two?
Yeah, it's a coin flip for me, honestly. Like, if I think it's harder. I guess if we just pick a direction, I think it's harder to find the wing that you're looking for because you'll expend all your resources for Aiton. Versus Wiggins, you still have some guys that you can move around if you have to make trades for guys. So like, that whether it's for center and whatnot. So I think that's like it's just a very interesting way to kind of think about how this is going to sort of work out. But I could certainly see a situation, Raj, where the Lakers have to make that decision. They have both these guys available, and they have to choose which one is the right one for them moving forward. So I'm curious. I think that's a real. I think that's a real thing. You could torture yourself over that over the week.
Yeah, that's probably what I'll do. If you had to give a first for either, you'd give it for Wiggins, right? If a first round got either of these done, I'm guessing Wiggins is the one you'd rather throw a first for than, like, if the trade came out, the Lakers folded and gave a first for Wiggins versus Ayton, you'd probably kind of see it more in the Wiggins.
And we get nothing back in return.
You get no draft equity back in returns. You give Rui filler. Plus,
I might do it. I might do it for Ayton. Honestly, I don't know if I'd do it for Wiggins.
Okay,
I might, just because I don't. I think Wiggins is closer to. He's older. He's like closer to being fully realized as what he is as a player. Whereas not that I think Ayton has more potential, but I think there's more synergy. Like, the way I think of it is this: Wiggins is probably overpaid for the role that he plays, whereas Ayton, you could argue that he's overpaid, but I don't think he's overpaid by a lot to what his actual ability is that he can provide to a team. Does that make sense, the way I'm describing it?
Yeah, I can see that. Where, Ayton's kind of 35 million is still high, but I think what he could be, that's probably what the range he is. Do you take any context towards where Laker first are really not? I mean, before they got Luka, obviously there was some conversation like, the Laker first are super valuable because AD's aging and LeBron's obviously 40. But now that Luka's in his prime, those firsts probably don't just share as much value. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I look at it as well. So those are most likely late firsts that you're putting on the table, which kind of change your negotiation. And so I can see all that in play as well. And we'll see if they like Dalton more to move. But yeah, it's interesting, man, that we got a whole draft day and 0 Laker moves. So 0
Laker moves. And
Nothing.
then tomorrow we have the second round, in which the Lakers do have the 55th pick. So our draft Disneyland will be either the 55th pick or whatever happens right after that when we hear about the undrafted folks that the Lakers are interested in. And we'll see how that goes. But Raj, we don't. I've been telling this to folks. Our offseason doesn't start until we know what LeBron James is doing with his player option. His
Sure.
deadline is coming up on the 29th. Not just his, Dorian Finney-Smith's player option deadline is coming up too soon. I think once the draft is done, you'll probably start hearing that stuff sort of roll out about what players and whatnot and stuff. What happens with them? A lot of different trades, different teams with positional log jams. It'd be very interesting to see what ends up being with those situations. One story we didn't talk about is a transaction. Fred VanVleet basically being paid $6 million to spread his cap hit over two seasons instead of one. I want to shout out, I think Rafael Stone is the GM for Houston for getting him to do that because A, he doesn't have to do that, but B, also it opened up the taxpayer MLE. So now they get the full, sorry, not taxpayer, they get the full MLE that they can use because they get so far under the tax by lowering his cap hit. I think that's great GM work to land KD, not give up stuff, and then be able to get VanVleet to do that to give yourself more ability to add other players. I think is very cool. I just wanted to talk about that because that's like creative. Like that's like you have to have a great relationship with that player to be able to get him to get him to be like, yeah, I'll just give you $6 million if you just help us out. And most players don't do that. They'll be like, no, I want more money. Yeah, I want $20 million extra. And him being willing to do that, VanVleet and the GM, that's pretty crazy.
That's very smart. They were also the one that gave him the balloon contract,
yes,
right? So it's
because they had the cap space. Yeah,
it's much easier to do that, right? It's different if Fred got that contract from Toronto and then they come here and go, you know what, we're cutting it off, but give us a break.
Yeah.
But if they were the one writing the first check, then it's a little bit easier to go to him and go, you know what, we've rewarded you. You understand that this is not your market. Obviously, we're paying you to be a veteran. But now we're paying you for your production, right? That vet now goes to production. When you get Kevin Durant, it's no longer be a grown up for these adults. It is now you're the point guard of these adults. Like you got to run our offense. You got to get teams in the right position. And so Fred obviously is not a $50 million point guard, but I think at 25 is a great number for him. Was awesome. I think in the playoffs for multiple games against the Warriors. So yeah, just smart GM work. Houston's been great. I think ever since getting Ime and I think Dylan Brooks gets hated on a lot, but he's kind of helped their culture as well.
Yes.
Kind of build a serious culture around there. Remove Jalen Green. Obviously, that was the one player they had to move. I find it fascinating, Vinay, because it didn't. Obviously, he's not the same type of player, and I'm not comparing these two, but it reminds me a lot of how I think the whole summer last year, everybody knew that OKC needed to trade Josh Giddey, and they somehow flipped him for Alex Caruso, and my head exploded. It's like the whole league knew. And I felt like this summer, same thing with Houston. Every single team knew they had to move Jalen Green.
Yeah.
And they somehow flip him for Kevin Durant. It's just, I don't understand. But great jamming by Houston. And it'll be interesting next year with them.
Yeah. So great jamming by the Houston Rockets. Great jamming by the Brad Stevens and the Boston Celtics. And somehow bamboozling these teams into giving you picks for guys that it just doesn't even make any sense. But yeah, Roger, we covered a lot of stuff. Well, obviously, some interesting things that happened in the draft. Identified a couple of teams that have positional log jams now because they have too many big guys there. Then talked a little bit about the Wiggins trade. Talked a little bit about DeAndre Ayton, which is a name I think is might become a name that reporters start talking about sooner than you think. And we'll just be interested. I'll be interested to see what happens. Tomorrow's day 2 of the draft, the second round, and then after that, it's player option season. We find out who's staying, who's going, who's available, who might not be available. Any other thoughts, Raj?
I just thought I'd go through these final two star comments that I think are kind of interesting. JR Medrano brings up, if I'm agent of the remaining centers in the draft, I'm pulling an Austin Reeves and clamoring to get picked at 5. I'm hoping for that. I think that's fascinating. I think the Lakers have a clear positional hole. I was thinking about this with Ace Bailey telling every good team, don't draft me. And Utah went ahead anyway and said, we like you, so doesn't matter what you think. You're coming here. And that's very interesting to me to do that with a top 5 pick. But in any case, with the Lakers tomorrow, any hope there, Vinay, that at 55, and you're more inclined, you're more in tune with the draft than I am, but do you think at 55 you can get a center that can make the team?
I think Creighton has a kid, Ryan Kalkbrenner. I think he plays for Creighton. He's a guy that might go undrafted. There's Johnny Broom. I don't know if he's in the draft. If he might be in the draft. He was a kid who played for Auburn.
Mhm.
Auburn, I think. And I'm not that deep into it, but there's a couple of centers that might go undrafted that the Lakers might be able to snag and add to the team in regards to that. So I'm not sure. But if there is, I love that. Like I think the Lakers can use as many big bodies as they can get.
Yeah, I agree. Feeling some big shoes. Bronny was 55th last year, so we'll see what the shoes go on this year. Bronny, by the way, slotted to play second year of summer league, so
Oh, all
which
right.
starts a lot quicker than people think. The California Classic actually starts on July 5th or
Oh yeah,
6th, I
right after
believe.
July.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so they don't get much time after the draft. Last one here from George. Speaking of the draft, do you guys do best player available first over fit? What are the condition exceptions? I pretty much been a lead best player. Again, I'm not a draft person, but
Yeah.
just I lead best player available in the draft. And my reasoning, I'll let you go, but my reasoning is I think in the draft, just again, I respect the craft of everyone who does this, but just in terms of the numbers, the draft is already a tough place to find a rotation player. Like it's just by
Mhm.
by the numbers, like finding good players is tough, especially later in the draft. That's why at the second round, getting a rotation guy at all is actually a win compared to the previous numbers. So if you slide those numbers even more and go to fit, you're kind of even more like you're
Mhm.
rolling the dice twice. You know what I mean? You're not only looking for the best talent. Now you're trying to fit this player in your team, which kind
Mhm.
of may mitigate some of the talent as well. So that I'm on best player available pretty much every time. There's rare exceptions. If you have like a superstar, like if you have Luca, you have the number one pick, you're not drafting, an on ball guard. Like
Yeah.
that's like that's kind of the exception. But other than that, I think you go pretty much best player available. Where are you at with that?
Yeah, I'm probably a BPA guy unless the BPA the gap in BPA between the two players can be overridden by fit. So it's like I'm
Mm,
not drafting. I'm trying to think of a draft where like something like that happened. Like okay, let's take the Spurs situation. I wouldn't take they could have taken VJ Edgecombe or they could have taken Ace Bailey or any of those guys, but they stuck with Dylan Harper, right? And so, or
hmm
actually, no, let's go one down. Let's go to the Sixers, right? Like the Sixers could have taken Ace Bailey or VJ Edgecombe. I think Ace said that he didn't want to go to the Sixers because he wanted to go
Yeah.
somewhere else. So that might have influenced the decision, right? So that probably naturally pushed him to VJ. But if I had to choose between the two guys, if the gap between them isn't significant enough in terms of what their strengths, like if I take all of the strengths that Ace has, all the strengths that VJ has, and then I look at my team and I say, well, the strengths between them is a little bit closer, then I probably lean towards fit. And I look and say, okay, well, Max is going to shoot the ball. Paul George is going to shoot the ball. Joel Embiid, if he's healthy, is going to shoot the ball. Jeremy McCain's going to shoot the ball. I don't necessarily need another guy to shoot the ball on this team. I need guys that can do other stuff too as well, and
hmm
maybe I can develop. And I think Daryl Morey's come out and said like BJ's got to work on his pull up game and stuff like that or whatever, his jump shooting and whatnot. So I'd probably maybe lean towards fit in that regards.
That's what's interesting about the 55th pick because the Lakers obviously have a really clear need, but
Mhm.
also at 55, you probably just want to go with your board
Yeah,
and go what the top player is, right? So I think tomorrow, like just again, I'm not gonna name a college player because I don't know them, but
yeah.
tomorrow if they draft a guard, I'm sure there's gonna be riots and pitchforks. But at the 55th pick, it's kind of like you kind of have to pick. But I guess to your point, the talent's probably pretty leveled off at that point of the draft too, where you could probably go for fit as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could see the argument for both, but it'll be
I,
interesting.
I will leave it with one last thing before we sign off. If the Lakers do feel frisky and they want to go and buy Mark Walter wants to start his regime off with a bang and buy a high second round pick, maybe mid to high second round pick.
Sure.
I hope the Lakers do that, and if they do, I hope they draft Cam Jones out of Marquette. He's a guy that I like watching. He's a guy I think can be a rotation player, like from the start. I think Cam Jones would be somebody who would be super helpful.
Oh, okay.
But we'll see. That
Heard,
would be
heard it
kind of a
here
cool
first.
way. Yeah, that'd be kind of a cool way for Mark Walters to make his presence known. He's like, hey, by the way, we're buying a pick, which is something that Laker fans have begged
Yeah.
for
I
this.
think the sale doesn't even go through till
Yeah, it doesn't.
July,
It doesn't. Yeah.
but any case, you could probably afford to buy a
Yeah.
second round pick.
Just
But
IOU it. Just like put it on the tab
little
for Mark
loan on
Walters.
there.
Yeah. Just put it on my tab. Yeah. But folks, a lot of fun tonight. The draft was very fun. Discussing all this stuff and all the noise that's been going on Lakers Twitter has been very interesting, very fun to do. But we still have some time. We have the second round tomorrow. Then we have the player options that get decided. Then we have a nice long weekend to enjoy 4th of July. And I'm sure we'll hear who's signing where and if somebody else is getting traded somewhere else. And then I think it'll be very interesting because California Classic will kick right off right after that. So, folks, for all the folks that were able to join, we appreciate you. If you weren't able to join at the start, you can always replay this on YouTube. I'll get this up on Apple and Spotify for you guys. If you have any time at all, head over to YouTube, like, subscribe, give us your thoughts in the comments. I always go back and read them and try to respond to them or at least acknowledge them. We appreciate that. Helps us on the YouTube algorithm. And if you feel like you want to, you can always join the Detailers Club via YouTube and help support the pod. Me and Raj always appreciate that. Shout out to the guys that are already in the Detailers Club Discord. And I think that's everything, Raj. I think we've covered quite a bit today, catching up. So we hope that you're having a wonderful day or a wonderful evening whenever you end up watching this. And if nothing else, we'll catch you in the next one. Take it easy.
Peace.